everyone, and welcome again to Jason's in the House. It's nice to be with you. Again, I'm Jason Parisella, a real estate agent with Keller Williams Realty right at the Cummings Center here in Beverly. And our guest tonight, which I'm probably going to not pronounce correctly, but it's Danielle Lovoie-Purdy. She's the owner of Home Renaissance in Groveland. So welcome, Danielle. It's nice to have you on the show.
Thank you, Jason. Nice to be here.
All right, great. So what is Home Renaissance?
Well, Home Renaissance, I founded it about 3 years ago, and I believed that there was a need for some affordable design solutions for homeowners in the area. And so the foundation behind the company was to sort of reuse and rethink on how you can utilize somebody's furnishings and rearrange them in such a way that makes a room functional and aesthetically pleasing. So from that idea came the redesign and the home staging.
So what year did you say you started?
In 2007,
2007.
3 years ago.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, by the way, did I pronounce your name correctly?
You did.
Okay,
you did.
good.
Thank you.
So it was back in 2007. When did you start doing the staging?
At the same time.
At the same
so
time?
I started, actually my background is in product development, and I was in the apparel industry prior to that, so I have a good eye for color and fabric and that sort of thing, and that one thing led to another, and it transitioned those skills into interior design.
Excellent. So do you have to, what's the kind of the procedure to become a designer? Is there certain training or designations and things?
Yes, there is training available. There are a number of affiliation that you can join. There's certified stagers. And so I went through a training program that was intensive in staging as well as redesign.
Okay.
And once you get accredited, then you can start operating as a
Now,
stager.
how do you keep up with, you know, all the different changes? There's always trends. There's new colors. I mean, there's all kinds of different things, as we know,
Yes.
change.
Yes,
So how
there's
do
a
you keep
lot
up
of
with all that?
resources out there, whether it's decorating magazines. There's a lot of tools on the internet that you can access, and you have shows like HGTV. A lot of people are
Right.
familiar with those, but they're good resources and certainly inspiring as resources. to keep
Now,
up.
this is one thing, too, that we hadn't discussed before the show, but I'm just curious, too. Do you ever work with a feng shui consultant or anything like that? Because, I mean, the other thing that I've learned about colors, people, there's different theories on colors and things like that.
Right.
What's your interaction with feng shui people?
I have not done any work with feng shui. There are certifications and people out there that do specialize in that. That's not an area that I've tapped into.
I
Nope.
see.
No.
So what what about the colors and stuff like that? How does that all
Well,
play into, I mean, different theories and...
in terms of colors, there are services out there, you know, color paint companies such as Benjamin Moore or Sherwin-Williams will put tools out there that have the trends for the upcoming years. And then you have interior design resources like the Boston Design Center. They always have a trend report that comes out. And a lot of the trends in interior design are linked to fashion trends. What you see in the clothing industry a lot of times will dictate how color is impacted in interior design as well. So you sort of keep track of all these industries.
Interesting. So it kind of, it starts from the clothing industry.
Whether it starts there or not, but a lot of the trends all work together.
Okay.
And you know, a lot of trends are linked to socioeconomic factors or cultural influences and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's,
so what is exactly home staging?
well, the simplest definition of home staging is to think of it as the process to prepare your home for sale. So when you decide you're going to stage or sell your house, you have to think a bit of staging as merchandising. So if you go into a mall, what is it that makes you want to go into a store more than another? Usually it will be their visual merchandising and their presentation. So the same thing applies when you're trying to put your house on the market. You want to think of it as a product. So you sort of have to remove yourself emotionally or distance yourself emotionally from your house and look at it as, what are the things I need to do to make it appeal to as many people as possible? So the goal is to make those necessary changes that will highlight the positive features of your home and downplay some of the flaws that you may have. And ultimately, you're trying to create that emotional connection with potential buyers, and you want them to remember your home and want to buy it ultimately.
Yeah, I mean,
So
the whole, obviously, it's to get the most amount of money, especially in this market, I find as a realtor. I mean, you need to do whatever you can to get as much money as you can. So I think staging is, from my perspective, too, is critical right now.
It is, and right now it is, but it's all in any market condition.
It's true.
Staging matters. It's particularly important right now because we have such high inventory of homes on the one hand, and on the other hand, you have a very discerning buyer out there, and a cautious buyer, I would say. So the combination of those two elements really makes it important to differentiate your house from the competition. And a lot of times I'll tell a client, take a moment to go see homes that are in your neighborhood that are for sale in the same price range, because you can see how, you know, if a house has been staged and yours isn't, you can see the differences, and it helps you understand the importance of staging.
Yeah, I know, you know, you wonder too, because well, people, I mean, everybody, we all live in our houses. You might think it's already staged.
Right.
So it's a little bit delicate sometimes too, that you trying to explain to people that we need to do things to get it ready for the market. So you must have to deal with that type of dynamic too.
You do, and it's an emotional time for some, emotional conversation sometimes with sellers. But I think it's not so much what we communicate to them, it's how we communicate and explain the reasons why it's important to do that. But you're right, once you understand the purpose of it and you're looking forward to move forward, then it makes it a little bit easier. But you know, the key is really to do as many changes or improvements so that your house will, and the way you decorate your house too is also very different than the way you're going to sell it. Right. And once a seller understands that, it makes the process a lot easier. Yeah.
So what percentage of the things you tell people do they actually do? I mean, is generally, what's the pushback? I mean, is it?
Sometimes there is an initial pushback, and a lot of time, interestingly enough, you find out through realtors or even by visiting back later on that they've actually done what you've asked them to do.
That's good, yeah.
You know, sometimes you just have to sleep on it and think about why it matters. And as a stager, you sometimes give more recommendations than not. And the key is to evaluate what you'll get the best return on investment for. So there are things that are maybe minuscule in the scheme of thing, but sometimes it's just those little touches that are needed to make a difference.
And the other thing too is obviously too with the part of you know, the budget.
Yes.
How much you want to spend, how much really needs to be done, picking the most important things.
Right.
So you probably have to, you're sure you have a priority of a list of things.
You have to, because you have to understand also the price point of the house.
Right.
And the strategy. Who are you marketing this house to? And then the budget, obviously, you have to take into account. And for the most part, I try to use what the client has in their house. And that's where the redesign comes into play, is you think about how can you reuse these items and these pieces of furniture and rearrange them so that it works. But the budget definitely is something to keep in mind. Right. Absolutely.
But you must have, your goal is, I would imagine, to keep the cost at a minimum because these people are selling their homes.
It is, and it is an investment, but on the other hand, it's worth the investment, because if you think of the longer your house is on the market, the perceived value goes down, and so the quicker you can turn it around, the quicker you can get rid of that mortgage payment, and the price reduction is a lot more expensive than the cost of staging your house. So.
Yeah, I would agree. Yep. We talked a little bit about it. We're in a buyer's market. So are there any other reasons you want to share as far as what's the really so important about staging, other than what we already talked about?
Well, I think it's important because we know today the internet obviously is key, and about 90% of buyers will start their search on the internet. And a house that's been staged will, first of all, it gives the appearance of being well cared for, well maintained, and it also photographs better. So when the buyer is looking at houses online, if the pictures are good and they're attractive, they're more likely to want to make the effort to go see your house. Whereas if the pictures don't come out as well, you've lost your chance really to get them the foot in the door. And so the stage house will definitely show better. So you want to think about that.
Yeah, which I think is a very good point, where most people looking online, it's that whole first impression thing.
Absolutely.
So do you work with particular photographers, or you recommend that they get a professional photographer? How do you handle that aspect of it? Because you could do a great job, and if the photos aren't.
Right, right. I mean, I don't have a designated photographer. A lot of realtors will have a professional photographer they hire, or they'll do a virtual tour, which is also a nice way to present a house, because you get a full view of the interior and the exterior.
Yeah, I would think on a staged home, the virtual tour is even more important.
It is.
To really show the way.
You can really highlight the positive features.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what about the people that, you mentioned it also with the home, the HTG, is that what it is? Yeah, I'm sorry, HGTV, and that, you can watch these programs. Does that mean somebody's qualified to do their own staging, or what do you think about that?
Well, there's a lot of talented people out there, and those shows are certainly a good start. However, I don't think people understand it can be difficult, because when you've lived in your house for so long, you don't necessarily see the things that have to be changed.
Right.
And so by bringing a professional stager in, you're getting that impartial point of view. And a stager has been trained to have a critical eye and know exactly the things that need to be, whether it's repairs or a loose doorknob or a fresh coat of paint. They can quickly identify those things, and they have tips and techniques that they can utilize to make the process very easy. So the shows are a good start. Reading about the staging and how to do it, and a lot of clients I have will start with a consultation and use that as a tool. They do the work, and then I go back and we sort of fine-tune. So that's another way to get around the process.
I see. So you'll do a consult first.
Yes.
And then they'll decide to hire you further, or whatever they decide at that point.
Exactly. And sometimes, like you said, some people are very hands-on, and so we talk through what needs to be done, and then I'll give them time to get through what needs the work that has to happen, and then I go back usually before photos are taken or before an open house, and we'll do a final walkthrough and really do the final touches.
Yeah.
So that's an option, or they can hire me to do the work, hands-on work.
Right. The other challenge I find, which even people that, the sellers and as a realtor, that keeping it staged too.
Yes.
Especially if you have children in the home, and depending on how many people live there, to keep it all in place and everything is a challenge.
It's an inconvenience, and you have to realize that. On the other hand, you hope that it's a short-lived inconvenience, and getting the buy-in from everyone in the home matters.
Right. Because
if the children are engaged and everyone is ready for the next step of moving on, then everybody can pitch in and try to keep the house in good shape.
Yeah, once everybody knows the importance of it, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Now, what about working with contractors or people that, painters and things like that, to do all the actual work once they tell you to go ahead and get it all done? How does that all work?
Well, I have access to a network of people that I've worked with and tried before, so you can easily recommend people, or sometimes the sellers already have their people that they want to utilize, and so we connect on what needs to be done, and but I always have a name in my back pocket.
So you have a list of people that you can use also?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Now, what about a vacant home?
Vacant home.
And how does that all work with, how do you get the furniture in there, and how does that whole process work?
Well, for that we will rent furniture, and there are companies out there that I can tap into that will rent furniture for usually it's a minimum of 3 months, or longer depending. And so you can select furnishings and accessories to bring into the home and staging. And it is important to stage a vacant house because, first of all, a vacant home is cold and uninviting.
Right.
The rooms appear smaller. And staging is all about helping the buyer understand what the house has to offer. And they usually what they see is what they know.
Right.
So if you stage the house, then they can say, oh, I know how I could lay out my furniture because this is my dining room or my living room. And so vacant homes need to be staged. It's very important. You don't need to stage every room in the house. There are key rooms that should be staged. If it's a model home, then everything should be staged.
Everything should be staged, like on new construction.
Yes,
Yeah.
And if you don't, depending on budget or price point, sometimes you just do the key rooms, which are kitchen, living room, master bedroom, master bath, dining room.
Okay. So what you would probably say is that if somebody's moving out of their home to put it on the market, to call the stager before they move everything out.
Yes,
to see what you can use, and it's probably a good opportunity to kind of, if you can,
it's a cost-effective way to do it, certainly, because rentals can add up. And there are situations where the client actually purchases furniture and they'll move it into their new home. It's rare, but it happens. We've had clients like that.
Right,
so.
right. We talked a little bit more. So the process is they call you, have the consult, then you you write it all up, and then they do some of the work, and then you kind of come in afterwards?
Yes, or they hire me to do all the work.
To do the whole thing?
Yes, yes, I had a situation like that.
How much of the hands-on work do you actually do? Will you actually paint rooms and stuff yourself? Or?
No, I don't. I can, but I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not a professional painter. I can do my own painting, I guess.
But you kind of place the furniture and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. I move furniture around, and I've got special tools to help me do that. And I usually do most of the work by myself, so it's easier.
Yeah. What's the, do you generally see that you can use their furniture, or you have to bring furniture in? I mean, that's going to depend on...
I'd say 90% of the time we use what they have.
Oh, good.
We assess the need for, if there's furniture that's been damaged or that might be dated and there's enough budget to rent furniture, then we'll bring in furniture. But for the most part, I try to use what's in the house.
Yeah.
And nowadays with slip covers and things like that, you can conceal furniture that might have been stained, or so there's little trick of the trade out there.
That's true too. You could take one old piece and just kind of make it the way you want it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Slip covers is probably, it's cheaper than renting it.
Renting or buying a new piece, absolutely.
Yeah. Good. Before we get into some of your samples, anything else you wanted to talk about regarding the process or anything like that?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay.
We can get into the
Good.
pictures.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the,
Sure.
so people can actually see the process.
Yes. So this is an example right here of a home office that I staged a few months ago. And there is definitely a surge of people that are working from home, telecommuting, and so there are more home offices. The issue with home offices is that a lot of times they'll be cluttered. And so in this photo up here on the left was the before picture. So there were a lot of books, a lot of...
Are we seeing that okay?
Can you see it all right? There were a lot of books and picture frames and distractions. So the clutter distracts the buyer. And so we tried to, in this situation, we packed up about half to 2/3 of what was in that room. And
you got rid of a lot of the books?
A lot of the books, the picture frames, memorabilia, things that were hanging from the ceiling, and then really focus on the focal point, which were the high ceiling. It was a loft. There was a lot of storage with the built-in cabinets. So really focusing on keeping it organized and neat. So the declutter is definitely an important part of staging. It's not the only thing, but...
do you generally, I mean, do you see people generally, do you try to get them to throw things out, or what do they do, store them? I mean, it's kind of...
It depends on the timing. Sometimes we don't have enough time before pictures are taken or it goes live on the market to go through that sorting process. But the ideal situation is when they go through the sorting, dispose of what they don't need, and start packing the things they will bring along, because then it makes this moving much easier.
That's a very good point. I tell people that too, that you should start packing. Get rid of, I mean, the clutter is one of the big problems. You're in your house for 20 years or even 10 years or 5 years. You just accumulate a lot of stuff. And to just remove whatever you're not going to bring with you,
have a
should just
yard
get it out,
sale
right.
or dispose of it in some way.
That's part of the
Absolutely.
process, I think, of getting ready, is to get rid of what you're not going to take with you.
Yes, and it's interesting because I'll have clients that have lived in a stage home for a few months, and they'll say, you know, we can't stand clutter anymore because
Right.
we kind of enjoy our new home, like looking neat and organized. So.
Sometimes, yeah, they want to stay in the house after you've staged it. They
Yep.
don't want to move.
Yep, exactly.
All right, what's the next?
The next one has an interesting story. This house had been on the market for at least 3 months and with very little activity on it.
All right, so you did this one after. It was already on the market and you came
It
in
had been on the
afterwards.
market without being staged. And had
That's
not,
quite a difference, by the
it
way.
is, it
Wow.
is. It had very little activity on it, if nothing at all. And so the sellers took the house off the market. It was the holidays, and then the realtor called me in and said, can you come and do a consultation? Well, the issue with the house was not so much, the house was in a nice neighborhood, well priced, but when you walked in through the front door, this is what you saw.
So you saw this,
This
okay.
is what you saw, the playroom.
Wow.
And it's not the fact that it's a playroom. The issue was there was actually a fireplace in that room.
You might want to tilt it the other way, yeah.
Like this?
Downward a little bit, yeah, right, okay.
It was intended to be a living room. And so as a buyer, if you walk through the door and you see this playroom, one might think, okay, that's a living room. But for most people, they're having a hard time understanding, oh, this is how I lay out my furniture, and this is supposed to be a living room.
Right.
And so once I pointed that out to the sellers, they understood, and they actually did most of the work themselves. I gave them guidelines as to what needed to be done, how to place their furniture. And we found a room for the playroom elsewhere in the house.
I was just going to ask that. What did you do with the playroom?
Moved,
yeah.
well, it was convenient for them because they had young children, but we found another place in the house where they could have a smaller playroom, and then regain the living room space.
So that was really intended to be a living room in this house.
It was.
But they were using it as a playroom.
That's right. It was.
Yeah, that's quite a difference.
It was. And but what happens is when you live in your home, you'll use a room for the purpose that suits your needs.
Right.
And so I always tell sellers, once you put your house on the market, you have to stage every room based on their original intent. So if it was supposed to be a bedroom and you use it as a sewing room or a home office, you have to break it down and make it a bedroom because that's its original intent. And so that's exactly what happened in this situation, is the living room could not be the playroom.
Right.
And actually this house went under agreement within a week.
Wow.
So it was really interesting to see the impact of that.
That's great.
That's a pretty dramatic change.
And they did a lot of the work themselves,
They
too.
did it all by
Well, that's-
themselves.
yeah.
They did it all by themselves, so it was great.
Good.
The next couple set of pictures show the importance of color. And a lot of times you'll hear stagers say you need to paint your rooms, and the reason for that is that a fresh coat of paint makes a room look brighter, it makes it look larger. And it can also date a room. In this situation, the before picture, there was stenciling, the room was dark, there was blue carpeting, and it just looked dated.
Yeah,
and
you can see that big hutch there you moved to.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And so by what we found out by talking with the seller is that there was actually hardwood flooring underneath the carpeting. So we ripped the carpeting up and refinished the floors and painted the room a more neutral color. And already by looking, just those two changes, it updated the house, or, the feel of the room dramatically. And color does have an impact, and you have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point too. When you have hardwood floors and they're covered, especially with an outdated colored rug, it's so important to, I think,
Yep.
to show the floors.
Exactly.
Most people now, I think, want hardwood floors.
Yes, I would say certainly
them
on the first floor of a house,
Right.
it's something that's considered desirable.
Right.
Bedrooms, you tend to see more carpeting, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty dramatic change. And then the next, but sometimes you don't have to paint the walls. You can just use accessories or accents to make create a color story. So in this case,
Oh, I see. You changed the
that room looked a little
bedstand,
drab
yeah.
and I'd say maybe boring.
Right.
Didn't have anything inviting about it, and so I actually scavengered the house with the seller's permission and found a few pieces of furniture in another room and
Wow.
created a color scheme with artwork. And this room actually, we didn't paint the walls, but by bringing accessories and bedding that had color to it and new window treatment, we created a room that looked a lot more inviting.
Yeah.
Had a warm feeling to it. So.
Interesting. They had those blue pieces in the house?
In another room.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yep,
'cause it
in
goes- yeah.
like a little den, and so, but I just brought those in and created a new room.
Excellent.
Yep, with very little
So that I was going to say, you
expense.
didn't. Yeah, there was very little that they had to spend on that. Yeah.
It was probably less than $100
Wow.
just to get the new sheer and the bedding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So.
We have a few more. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes left, so we
Okay.
can go through a few more
Yeah,
and see
quickly
where
go through. How about we just do this last one? The last one here is about just the furniture placement and the importance of traffic flow, making sure that you can you don't obstruct the proper flow of traffic. So in this room, there was a lot of there's just furniture blocking the
I see.
the
It kind of
focal
cluttered
point.
up the. Yeah.
It was blocking the focal point, the fireplace. So by removing a couple chairs and end table, it just made it a little easier to move around the room. So
Yeah. You moved. You took that one of the chairs right out.
yep, actually a couple of
took a
chairs.
couple, yeah.
This one and this one. Oops, this one, and then a couple of tables here and there, just to open up the room. And you can actually now see the fireplace by looking at it.
That's true too. Yeah.
But sometimes, once you've decluttered and cleaned your house, then you need to put it back together because you've got to make sure that you can actually move around properly.
Yep.
So.
We can probably do one
Yep,
more. And
one
then we
more?
Can, yeah.
Okay, so this one is just the last example of, we talked about vacant rooms. And this one I brought in rental furniture.
So now, was this they already moved out, or is it?
They
just,
had already moved
Okay.
out, and the only thing that was left was a couch in that space. So we ended up bringing in some rental furniture and accessories and whatnot, and it made a world of difference because it's hard to envision how you would place your furnishings
I was thinking
in
the
here.
same thing. How you set the room up? Yeah.
Right. So having rentals in, and we didn't, I didn't have to bring that much furniture, but just enough to create a feel for how to use the space, and that definitely makes a difference. And interestingly enough, a room that has furniture doesn't echo. If it echoes,
that's right too, yeah.
It echoes when you're in a house that's vacant. It echoes, and there's just that cold feeling
It's kind
about
of, you're
it.
right, it's just, it's cold,
Yep.
and it just kind of gets more difficult, I think, for people to
Right.
envision. But that's a good point too, from my perspective also, from an agent's point of view, that sometimes you look at a room or a space and you really can't figure out where you're going to put things.
Right.
So when it's there, you give them, you're kind of already doing their work for them.
Yeah, or you give them food for thought,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah. What other types of services do you provide?
Well,
Besides staging,
aside from the staging, I talked earlier about the redesign, and that's more geared towards clients that are living in their home and they want to redecorate a room or the entire house. So color consultation. Another service that's popular is the furniture planning. So if you're going to purchase new furniture, having a layout of what type of furniture fits in your room, the dimension, that sort of thing. It's a good tool to have when you go shopping for furniture. So, or if you're downsizing. I have clients that are moving into smaller homes and don't know if their furniture is going to fit. So I prepare furniture plans for them. And
now, do you actually do the shopping too?
When I'm asked.
If they want, you'll
when
go
I'm
and get
asked,
stuff.
yes,
Do you get very good deals and stuff?
I can, yes, I can.
I mean,
get
you
some
go
good
and go
deals.
online and all this other stuff to try to
Online,
get the
and
best.
then there's trade discounts and
Yeah.
things like that. Yep. So.
I mean, I know from personal experience, doing my household, you can spend tremendous amount of money on it.
Right, and time too.
I mean, there's such a range of prices on
Right.
everything.
Yeah, absolutely, and
Even
it takes
curtains
time
and-
too to just find the right thing. And because I'm out there a lot, usually I know where to go to find
Yeah.
the items.
Well,
that
that's
are
what I
needed.
find too. When some people that are professionals at it can, even though you're paying for your service, that if you're providing a, you know, you can save a little money here. And I think over in the long run, you're probably saving money.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And aggravation.
Right,
Yeah.
that's true too, the
Yeah.
aggravation factor, your own time.
Yeah.
Very quickly, how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to?
Well, they can reach me. I have a website, and it's www.homerenaissanceonline.com, or by phone at 978-618-1523.
Great, well, thank you very much. That was
Thank
very
you.
informative and
Appreciate
good information.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, before we close, I want to thank everybody at BevCam for allowing us to be here again tonight, and thank you all again for being with us at Jason's in the House. If you ever have questions for me or want to be a guest on the show, feel free to call me at 978-927-6030. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.